going on, everybody? My name is Bendy, and this is Disney Heroes.
What? What the fuck?
What's going on, everybody? My name is Bendy, and today I'm going to be continuing my Noob Guide series with the part 2 of the basics of just this game in general. So I wanted to start with just a couple quick little things that I probably should have included in the last video, but I wanted to mention that obviously you level up your heroes with the XP energy that you get usually from campaign, but there's other places you can get them too, like the black market and things like that. I wanted to mention, it's probably a bit more of an advanced tip for those that are like at probably my level, but a way that you can make money in this game pretty easily is actually selling these energies right here, because this one's like 95,000. So I'll show you real quick how much you can get just from selling these. You get 6 million just from selling that, and that was only like 50. And then this other one here you can sell for 21,000 each, and I have like over almost 2,000 of them. So instantly just 40 million right there. So that is totally an option. And the reason that you can do that is because these ones you can't actually sell. So if you want to conserve the other energies for money, as you collect those the highest up energies, what are they called? The Ultra XP drinks, in order to level up your heroes. You can do that in order to save all the other energies for leveling up your other heroes. And you can see that you use at this point, and if you're a lower level, then you'll be able to get way more levels just from this amount of them. But that only uses like 40 or so to go from 215 to 220. So that's just an option if you would like to. Obviously, if you're always kind of behind on the cap raises and everything like that, I wouldn't really recommend it. But if you're only, say, working on a few heroes a month every cap raise, or you're like really high level like I am, or stronger, that is totally an option for you guys. And then the other thing I wanted to mention really fast was, if you look at the stat pages, you'll see these different colored numbers. I just want to explain what these numbers mean really quick. So if you see the green numbers, that means that they come from the friend discs that you have equipped. So you see, what was it? It was 328,000. So you can see if I go over to disc here, it's got 328,000 skill power. So that's where that comes from. And then the purple ones, they come from mods. So we'll go over to my mods real quick. And that was skill power, right? So you can see my increased skill powers here, and that probably adds up to like 32,000 or something like that, or whatever it said, or 28,000. And then the third one here is the red, which you can probably guess comes from their red skill. So you see 148,000, 148,000 right there. And then last color is blue right here, which comes from enhancements, which are over here. So I'll do some more of that just to show you. So we did that. We got a little bit more increased armor and basic damage from that enhancement. So I just wanted to quickly say what the 4 different colors of these skills mean, if you were wondering why the different colored. I don't really know why it doesn't just combine them automatically into the white numbers, but that's just what that means. I just wanted to explain that super fast. So I wanted to start this video with just going through a few other skills that'll appear on the core stats page here. There's like 3 or 4 things that I didn't mention in the first video, and then that'll just cover every single thing that could be on the stat page. And then after we finish the stats page, I wanted to go into a few of the main hero buffs, stuns, disables, things like that, like freeze, scare, sap, what all that stuff means. Just briefly going through, maybe including like the best hero that does those kinds of things and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm going to do here. I just want to thank you guys for the support on the first video in the series. I know a lot of you guys were saying that the first one helped you out a lot. So I'm really hoping that as I continue this series, you guys can really start to get the idea of what everything means in this game and how you can improve. So let's just begin. First thing I wanted to show you is reality negation here. So what reality negation does is, if we go over here, it reduces an enemy's armor, allowing you to do more normal damage. So when you attack with, so here was with Nick here, when he uses a reality attack, or a fantastic attack, I should say, so that's going to be all of his attacks. We're going to do that really quick. So anytime he does a fantastic attack, it'll reduce reality in order for him to do more damage, basically. And that's pretty much all that is. And reality negation works the exact same way as the normal crits and the fantastic crits do, as I explained in the last video, where every point that you are above the level of the enemy you're facing gives you 1% more reality negation, basically. And you'll kind of see a theme with all these ones that I talk about in the next few. They all kind of work the same way. So the next one is going to be improved healing. So if you couldn't guess just from the name, it just gives you more healing from their healing abilities, basically. By default, it is 0%. So as you see here with my Rapunzel here, I get 120% improved healing. So all of her skills, like healing hair here, she'll be doing 120% more healing with it, with that stat. I think only supports are going to get this on their stats page. Yeah, see Kristoff, he has 110. I don't know why Cheshire does, but yeah, Cheshire has it. He has 65%. That's probably just healing for himself, I think. But I think mostly it's just going to be the supports that have it. But just something to be aware of, it's there. Next is going to be conservation, which I'll open up this so we can read it together. But what conservation does is it reduces the amount of energy a hero spends when they use their white skill. So anytime Elsa uses her white skill here, I will be doing 20% less energy in order to use it. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to mention before. Every hero has 1,000 max energy. I know it's super minor, but I just didn't mention it in the last video. But every single hero has 1,000 max energy. So basically, every time Elsa uses her white skill, she'll only be using 800 energy in order to use her white skill. That's pretty much what conservation means. Next, we have Tenacity. Tenacity reduces the lengths of stuns and disables that a hero receives. And it works exactly the same way as the crits. So any point you are above the level of the heroes you're facing gives you 1% more tenacity. Since I'm level 220 and I'm probably going to be facing a lot of level 220 opponents, my 240 tenacity means that I have 20% reduced disable and stuns, the length when I get stunned or disabled. Does that make sense? And then the last thing I wanted to mention that could be on the stats page here is attack speed, which every single hero always just has default 100 attack speed, or 100% attack speed, and it doesn't appear on anybody's thing unless you use a mod in order to increase it. So if I go over to my mods here, you'll see I have an attack speed increase mod here. So that is what that'll affect. And it just means I go 10% faster using all of my attacks with Duke. And that's pretty much all that is. The only way to increase it is with mods, and by default it's always at 100% for everybody. And the last thing I wanted to talk about from the stats page, which I couldn't actually find anybody that has it, but it is on this list here, so I just wanted to quickly mention it, is normal and fantastic prowess. Prowess increases the normal or fantastic damage of all of your attacks. So it works the exact same way as the crits and all these other things that I've been talking about do. Just 1% more damage with normal or fantastic attacks per level that you are above the opponents that you're facing. So if I'm level 220 and I have 250 normal prowess, I will be doing 30% more damage with all of my normal attacks that I do. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I couldn't find anybody that actually has it. Like, I went through literally every single hero, and I don't know. It's on here though, so I'm sure somebody has it or there's a way to increase it, so it must exist somewhere. But yeah, so that's everything that is going to be on the stats page here. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to add was I will include the timestamps again in the description, just like I did in the last one. So you guys can skip around, come back to this video if you just want a refresher on what each of these things are individually. I think that's going to help you guys out in the future. So now I'm going to move on to a few of the more common buffs, debuffs. I'm just going to explain what those kind of mean, and the various ones such as study, blind, etc, etc, etc. So I'm going to go through all of those now. So I wanted to start by just explaining what damage over time is really quick. I mean, you could probably guess what it is. It's literally just damage that is done over a period of like a couple seconds. So the best example is Pleakley. He's probably the king of damage over time right now. So what his white skill does is he has his mosquitoes that he sends out. They deal such and such damage to all enemies, and then also on top of that damage initially, it deals another about double the damage, I think, maybe a little bit more, like 50% more bonus damage over the next 8 seconds after that. And then there's just more and more things that Pleakley does that just increases that. So he's like the king of damage over time, but there's obviously plenty of other skills that use it. But all that is just damage that is done over a period of a couple seconds rather than just all at once. And then similarly, I wanted to explain that splash damage is damage, so you're going to target one enemy, and then the splash damage is going to just hit other nearby enemies, but not quite as hard. So it's going to hit one enemy, and then it's just going to like trickle over to other enemies beyond that. So I wanted to explain that super fast before I move on to what buffs are. So buffs are anything given to a hero in order to give them some kind of boost in power, whether it's attack, whether it's giving them some kind of invisibility or something like that. So there's like 5 or 6 different main sources of buffs in this game, outside of just like basically just giving your teammates attack, defense, etc, etc. So I'm going to start with invisibility, because I'm sure anybody who's played this game for any amount of time knows that Randall is pretty much the king of invisibility. I personally don't use Randall all that much anymore, but he used to, probably back in early 2020 or something like that, or maybe it was even 2019. Either way, when he first came out, he was like the best hero in the entire game. But all invisibility is it makes you invisible, obviously, but it makes you untargetable by enemies, so no attacks will purposely attack them. But they do still take some damage just in general from attacks. It's just greatly reduced. I think it's by like 50%, but I think everybody that has invisibility is a little bit different. So in Randall's case, he takes 50% less damage, and he has a 50% chance to dodge any disable while invisible. All of them are a little bit different. Like my other example here is Spar, and he also comes into battle while prowling, which puts him invisible, and he receives 75% less damage. So every single one is a little bit different, but the main thing is when you're invisible, you are untargetable by any enemy attacks, basically. So my second example, which is actually kind of a new thing, which was introduced with Jumba here, is called Precise, which I think they put in the game in order to be a counter for Randall specifically. So enemies with Precise are able to actually target invisible enemies, and they can't have any of their attacks dodged or evaded. So that's pretty much the anti-invisible. So if you're facing anything like Randall or Scar or any other invisible hero, if you can find I think there's only like 3 or 4 right now that have Precise. If you can find those, that would be a great counter for those kind of things. But yeah, so invisible, you can't be targeted by any enemy attacks. Precision makes it so you can target invisible enemies, basically. So the next one I want to talk about is Hardy. There's a pretty decent amount of heroes that have Hardy. So Hardy, it blocks a debuff from being applied to the affected. So if, say, Rapunzel, she gives herself 6 stacks of hardy, so that means that the next 6 debuffs, which I'll get into debuffs in a little bit, that'll be the next section that I do. So that'll be anything like blind, curse, scare, etc. She'll block those from hitting her. And I think with her, yeah, with her red skill here, she gives a stack of hardy to an ally as well. And there's several heroes that have hardy and give hardy and things like that. So that's just all that does. It just blocks a debuff from hitting your team. So the next one is going to be Invincible, which, if you couldn't guess, it basically just makes them unkillable. The best example of Invincibility is Megara down here. So what Megara does is she links with, it can be any ally, but if you're playing on auto, which I know most people do, she just links with the frontmost teammate. And what that does is it just makes it so that the teammate that she's linked with is unkillable or invincible, so they can't be killed until Megara is killed. And then in addition to that, Megara with her Shank friend disc makes it so that when Megara dies, the teammate also stays invincible for a number of seconds. I have it at 7.5 when it's maxed. And also, if you work on Megara, definitely do the Shank disc, 100%, just as an aside, because that is way better than the other one. Okay, so that's Invincibility. The next 2, it's kind of a buff and then kind of a debuff, so I'm not really sure exactly where to put it, so I'm going to kind of use it as my transition into debuffs. Study. If you study your opponents, that means that any normal damage that you do, any normal attack, so that's any attack that has the little fist next to it. Let me find one here. So any skill that has the little fist next to it is going to always crit when you study an enemy. Hector Barbosa here is probably the best example of study. He was like the original one to study, really. And that's pretty much it. There's several heroes that use study in order to, as like a strategy. They get like attack boosts against studied enemies, things like that. But just at its core, all studying does is it makes all normal attacks do crits. I know Maximus is also a good example here. Yeah, so he has studied enemies deal 85% less, but that's just one of his skills. But there's several heroes that have like various things that do good against study or are counters to study also. I think Bunsen and Beaker is a good example of being anti-study. Yeah, all allies are immune to study. So Dr. Bunsen here is the counter for study. So on the opposite end of things, Scare is the opposite of study. So Scare actually makes all fantastic moves crit. So that's pretty much going to be all of the, not really all the villains, but like most of the villains in the game have it. And also the Nightmare Before Christmas heroes. Let me find Jack Skellington, because he's the best example of the scare people. So he scares for 6 seconds and stuns them. Just like Study, there's several heroes in the game that have some sort of skill that goes good against scared enemies. Yeah, like Jack, he heals every time he damages a scared enemy. So there's like several things that are have good strategies that go with scare. Alright, let's get that out of there. But that's pretty much all it is. So Scare makes all fantastic attacks crit, whereas Study makes all normal damage attacks crit. And that's kind of why I wasn't exactly sure if it was a buff or a debuff. It's a buff for your team, but it's kind of a debuff for your enemies, so I wasn't really sure where to put it. So I'm going to use this as my transition into debuffs here. So debuffs, as you could probably guess, are anything that gives the hero some kind of decrease in power. So there is, again, probably like 5 or 6 of those, and also there's a few minor ones that only like 1 or 2 heroes have, but they're still there. I'll probably get into those like really briefly at the end of this video, because they're not super important or very common, but they are something to be aware of. So debuffs, we have Slow. I'll talk about that first. So Pooh is kind of the king of slows. Every couple seconds he gets a stack of honey, which gets applied to the enemies, and then that reduces their speed by 10% up to 80%. And if you faced any kind of poo that gets going for more than like 15 or 20 seconds, you know that it's very annoying. But all it does is just slow you down pretty much and make it so you can't use your moves as quickly. Curse is going to be next. That's going to be, I think, Maleficent is the best, or actually Davy Jones probably. Davy Jones is a good example of Curse. Alright, so cursed enemies, they have their healing reduced by 50%. So if you use, say, Curse against a very strong, like Joy or Rapunzel or any other healer out there, they're going to have their all of their healing reduced by 50%. So you might have a better chance against them if you use a Curse team, just as a quick example. But all Curse does is it reduces all healing done by 50% by all sources. That includes themselves, any supports that have healing abilities, etc. Fatigue is going to be next, which is also a pretty new one that only a few people have so far, but I think they're going to be bringing in more and more as more heroes come out. Fatigue is kind of the opposite of Hardy. So what that does is block a buff from being applied to the enemy. So you give Fatigue to an enemy hero, and every stack of it will block one buff from being applied. So say they get an attack boost from a teammate or something like that, it'll prevent that from going off for a couple times. I think Disgust has it. I can't remember. Oh, she does Distaste. That's like one of her exclusive abilities or whatever. I don't remember who has it, to be honest. It's one of the new people. Either way, that's all that does. So it's kind of the opposite of Hardy. So Hardy blocks a stun or disable from hitting the hero, and Fatigue blocks a buff from being applied to the hero. Knockback, it's not really a debuff or anything like that, but all Knockback does is it just pushes them back. Most of the time, maybe not most of the time, but a good number of times when you get knocked back, you also get stunned at the same time, which I will be getting into stun in a little bit here, but all that does is stop you from using any attacks for a couple seconds. I guess I got into it, but that's alright. Sap is the last debuff I have here. Cheshire Cat is a pretty good example of Sap, and all Sap does is it reduces the energy gain. Oh, Jesus, what the heck? The final debuff is going to be not Cheshire Cat, Sap. What Sap does is it reduces the amount of energy that is gained by 50%. So I think Cheshire Cat is probably the best example of Sap in this game. So he saps enemies for 15 seconds every time he uses his white skill. Again, what that does is it reduces the energy gained by 50%. And that's pretty much all the debuffs. And then the last one I wanted to get into quickly was the disables. So disables, there is 5 of them. I already kind of talked about the first one, so I'm going to talk about that. The first one is just a general stun. So what that does is it stops all heroes from stops the hero from attacking for a couple seconds. There's quite a number of heroes that have it. I'll just click on Rapunzel because I know she has it. Her frying pan pummel, whenever she hits them with the frying pan, stuns them for 9 seconds and knocks them back. So yeah, all that does is it just stops the enemy from being able to do anything for a couple seconds. Freeze. Everybody has freeze teams. You would think there would be more heroes that have it. I think there's actually only 13 people that are capable of freezing in this whole game, but it's just so rampant and widespread because it's just so ridiculously good. Everyone knows Kristoff. He's the king of freeze, pretty much. Probably one of the best supports in the game, just as a side note. But freeze, similar to a stun, it just stops the hero from doing anything altogether. Stuns, I think they can still move and stuff like that a little bit, but freeze, it just stops them from doing anything altogether. I mean, if you played this game for any length of time, you probably know this already. The third and fourth one I'm going to talk about together because they're just the opposite of each other. Blind and silence. So blind prevents all normal attacks from being used. So if you blind somebody, Milan is a pretty decent example of blind, because she has blind for 10 seconds when she does her white skill. So any of the moves that have a fist, they're going to be prevented from being used, basically, with blind. And then silence is the opposite. It prevents any of the fantastic attacks from being used for a number of seconds. I think Tia is the best example of silence in this game, because she has a pretty ridiculous silence. Yeah, for 11 seconds when she uses her white skill. Ever since she got a red skill, she's been pretty good. Or she also got a rework too at one point. I can't remember when. I think it was like the middle of 2020 at some point. But she got a rework and her red skills, and she's been pretty damn good lately. I don't use her a ton, but I've seen other Tias and she can be pretty scary. But she's probably the best example of silence. So just to go through again, blind prevents all normal attacks from being used, and silence prevents all fantastic attacks from being used. That's pretty much it. And the final disable is charm. I think Mini is the best example of charm. So all charm does is it makes all your enemies turn against them. So if you charm somebody, they'll start attacking their own teammates. And oftentimes when they get charmed, they get some kind of attack or speed boost or something like that in order to deal even more damage to their own teammates. Not all the time do they get some kind of buff from being charmed, but most of the time it seems like they do. Another good example of charm is, I think, Angel. Angel has quite a good charm as well. She also silences too. Yeah, so she removes 150 enemies from charmed. So there's just various different side abilities that go along with charm, but at its core, all charm does is it makes the enemies attack their own teammates. So that's all the disables. So to finish off this video, I wanted to quickly go through just one or two heroes that have other abilities. I already talked about Honey with Pooh a little bit. It just gets applied to the enemies and it slows them down every stack. So that's Honey. Next is Inspire, which Judy and Jim are the only two that have it. I'm not exactly sure what Inspire really does, because both Jim and Judy's Inspires are a little bit different, but I think it just gives some kind of basic attack boost to their teammates. The next one is Berserk, which if you've played this game for any amount of time, you know that Beast is the Berserker, but there is actually a few others that have it. But all it does is it gives an attack and speed boost, and it makes them so they can't die, basically. I think the other people that have Berserk, which I think there's like 2 or 3 others I can't think of right now off the top of my head. It might just be makes them unkillable for a number of seconds, but Beast is the main one that has Berserk. Enormous is what Alice does. Makes her enormous for 12 seconds. Well, enormous, she deals damage. She has a lot more defense, I'm pretty sure. She knocks back. She just gets like a huge buff basically from enormous, just all around. And becomes huge and you can only see her feet. And then the last buff, I believe. Yeah, the last buff that is just kind of on one hero is Miguel's Notes. Here he is. So Miguel's Notes, they heal an amount every second, basically. That's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy with those. And Miguel is kind of a weak support hero. He's probably the original healer, pretty much, but he's just not that great anymore. But his notes, they just heal every second. So that's the buffs, just the random buffs that are in the game. Then there's a few debuffs also. So there is Ursula, who has Hex ability. So if they use their white skill while they're hexed, they will be stunned for 4 seconds. And also, while they're hexed, if they try and use their white skill, they'll still use the energy up from using their white skill, but it won't go off and they'll be stunned. So that's all Hex does. And then I think the last main one I wanted to talk about was Sally's Poison. So all Poison is it deals damage over time. I don't think it does anything else. I think it just does damage over time. So it's nothing too crazy. But that's what Sally does. I think that's pretty much all of the disables and buffs and debuffs. So that pretty much covers everything in the game. Every hero has various skills and abilities. There's various teams that can be built around all of these buffs and disables and all that. Like there's plenty of scare teams that you can make. There's tons of silence teams now. Obviously there's freeze teams. Everybody has dealt with those for a long time. And yeah, there's a few other just minor ones here and there. Actually, I can show you really quick. I literally just found this out today. I didn't know about any of this. So if you go into any spar with somebody, I'll open this up really quick. I'm just gonna hit fight. If you pause the fight, there's this little icon down here where it shows a little description of what every single one of these things that I talked about, and also other ones that I didn't talk about. But I literally just found out about this today. I had no idea this was here, so this is kind of blowing my mind. But shout out to Mufasa in my guild for telling me about this, because I had no idea. But it gives a description of what all of these things mean, basically. So all you gotta do is just go into any spar with anybody and just hit pause and just click on that and it'll show everything. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the basics of this game. I'm not exactly sure where to go with the next video. I might talk about maybe friendship or just the game modes, just like a brief overview of all the game modes. Let me know what you guys think should be my my third video in this noob guide series. If you like what I'm doing here, like, subscribe, you know the deal with YouTube. Join the Under 100 Club. You know you want to be in there. I want you in there. I have, I think 42 subscribers right now. There's plenty of room left in the 100 Club. Get yourself in there and then you can brag to everybody in the comments about how you were in the Under 100 Club. You know? What could go wrong with that? Hit me up on Reddit, or if you're in server 1, just DM me on the game. I'd love to talk to anybody that enjoys my videos. I just want to make some friends, you know? I know this is a pretty small community, but everyone seems pretty tight-knit here. My Reddit is Bendy Ben. That's Bendy Ben with a 3 for an E. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace. Alright, and that is all the skills that are on the detailed stats page. Oh wait, there was actually.
"15 minutes later." Two very boring minutes later.
I know I've seen it somewhere.
Two weeks later.
What the hell is Prowess? What the fuck? Does nobody have Prowess anywhere? Someone has to have it somewhere.
Several months later.
Huh.
The following day.
That is very weird.
Thousands of tears later. Approximately 10 hours later.
Bruh.